Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I want to talk to you about how and why you should get booked on podcasts as a guest, especially if you have your own podcast. So I'm going to go over why being a guest on podcasts will grow your business, first of all. We're going to talk about in this episode and the next episode how to pick the right podcast to pitch, and then how to pitch podcast effectively. So this is going to be a two-parter. First part this week, second part next week. And the reason being on a podcast as a guest, first and foremost, works is that we go back to that old thing that I've said many, many times, is that podcasts are truly the best form of content marketing for building the level of trust within a community, within your community, that leads to business growth, successful monetization, all those things, whether you have your own podcast or whether you're going on other podcasts. And also, what I've said many, many times is that podcasts really, truly are referral marketing on a grand scale, because you on another podcast as a guest, or you with your own podcast, is helping, you are helping people. You are connecting people who have a problem with someone, yourself, who can solve that problem. So, best form of content marketing for building trust and referral marketing on a grand scale. So, let's talk a little bit today about why you should guest on podcasts. Okay? Whether you have a podcast or not. And I'll go back to that stat that I've shared many, many times. We know that podcast listeners listen to a lot of your episodes, okay? And they stick around during the episode. 93% listen to more than half or all of each episode, okay? So they're spending a lot of time with you. And during that time, right, what are they building? Trust in you. It's also, why you should guest is because you're going on podcasts where the listeners of that other podcast have a lot of trust in the other host, okay? Remember, again, podcasts are a very convenient form of content that people are consuming. They can listen to it anywhere. They can listen to it commuting. They can listen to it while they're working out. All those things are still true when you're a guest on another podcast. If you go on other podcasts, there's a chance that they may have a larger audience than your podcast. So you're reaching a newer, larger audience. And we've talked about this before in terms of growing your own audience. You can go on other podcasts just to borrow those audiences. And those audiences, again, because they trust the host, are ready to listen to you, because the host, in a way, just by having you on, is endorsing you. Okay, so I want you to take a moment now and think about, okay, I know I'm listening to Danny's podcast, and I'm sure I'm your favorite podcast, right? But think about one of your other podcasts that you love, favorite podcast, and think about if you consider the host of that podcast a friend. Do you trust them? Okay, think about that for a second while we start moving on. So now we're going to work through the 5 steps to getting booked on podcasts, and I'm going to share with you some of my ideas, but I'm also going to share with you some of the ideas of someone you've heard on this podcast a couple times now, Angie Trueblood, who is really the best at this, and a lot of these recommendations I'm grabbing from her. I think I told you recently, or if you're on my email list, I participated in a 5-day challenge to pitch some other podcasts to be a guest. And I went through that challenge, and I've already been booked on 5 other podcasts as a guest just by doing what Angie said. So what I share with you today, some of it's me, some of it's Angie, but you should definitely listen to it because it works. So the first step in getting on other podcasts is you got to figure out why you're doing it. What is your goal for getting booked on other podcasts? Okay. Are you trying to get leads, client leads? So for me, if I'm thinking about Emerald City Productions, my business, I might want to try and find more law firm clients for Emerald City Productions, because we work with a lot of law firms and they're really great clients and I love working with them. Or you could be trying to get more purchases for your products. So for me, that might be more memberships in my podcaster pod. That might be why I go on other podcasts. Or I might want to grow my email list. I might want to grow my podcast audience. All these things can be true for going on other podcasts as a guest. Now that you've got your goal, you move on to the second step, and you got to figure out who's your ideal listener for these guest spots that you're going to do going on other podcasts. You got to figure out who are you trying to reach, right? And then what podcasts are they on? What podcasts are they listening to? I mean, what are they listening to? Who do you want to listen to you, and what are they listening to? That's the next step. So you want to describe them. Describe that ideal listener as a blank who needs blank. A business owner who needs marketing advice. A coach who wants to systematize their business. So for me, if I go back to that law firm example, it would be small firm lawyers who need to build trust with potential clients. That might be my phrase, my single phrase for my ideal listener. And then I got to figure out, okay, what are they listening to? How do I do that? How do I find other podcasts that ideal listener is checking out? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for topics that are similar to or complementary to the expertise that I have as a guest. Okay. And you want to try and be specific. You want to share as many details as you can, add some context. So I might say, I want to look for podcasts that are teaching lawyers to grow their firm or market their firm or systematize their firm. Okay. Podcasts teaching lawyers to grow, market, and systematize their firm. So take a moment now, and if you're driving, don't stop. You can pause and pull over, or you can do this later. But write down who your ideal listener is. Okay, a blank who wants blank, a something who needs something, a someone who needs something. Okay, go ahead and do that. So we're gonna pause here for this week, and next week we're gonna come back with the second part of this episode about pitching to be a guest on podcasts, or how to get booked as a guest on podcasts. So I will see you again next week.